and start. So thanks for coming. A couple of disclaimers before I start. One is that in case it wasn't made clear, I actually do have a company that markets audiobooks. But I promise I really hate it when people do that sort of bait and switch where they sort of give you a tease of information and then you pay me and I'll give you more information. So I'm not doing that. But at the same time, I have done like a bazillion intro to production of audiobook presentations, but this is a new presentation for me. So I usually do them in person. I haven't done a lot since the pandemic, so I'm not great with the going back and forth between the PowerPoint and the Zoom. So my apologies if we get stuck anywhere. I think what I'm going to do, because at least when I do it on my screen, all I can see is the slideshow. So I will stop every section and come back and see if you guys have questions. But I'm just ask for your full and honest feedback. If any of this is useful to you or confusing, please let me know. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now, and you can see my messy desktop. Oh, to do that. And now I'm going to share the slideshow. Okay. Oh, I can see you, but I can't see the chat. So yeah, just interrupt me if you have a question. That's totally fine. All right, so we'll go back to the beginning. So starting halfway through. Okay, so audiobook marketing for authors. This is an overview. Basically what I did is I have this very long checklist of things to do that I give to clients that I work with. And it's actually available on my website too. But some of it is hard. I find people don't understand what I'm talking about unless I discuss it. So I'm going to hit on all the things on my checklist that are things that as an audiobook pro, I assume people understand, but I've found that they don't always. So these are the sections that we're going to go through. What you do before you hire your narrator. And if you have already produced audiobooks and you're like, oh shit, I didn't do those things, well, there's always workarounds. But ideally, you're going to do some things before you hire. Then there's some things you're going to do after you've hired your narrator while they're recording, and which is kind of close to right before. There'll be a time when they're done recording, but before you upload, well, you have to do another set of tasks, then another set of tasks when the audiobook goes live. And then I'll have a list of things you can do with books that are already published, ways to sort of increase their tail. So the first big marketing decision that you're going to make is actually distribution. And right now, anyway, the big difference is that if you are exclusive with ACX, which is, where most authors end up going because they created the playing field. If you're exclusive, you get 40% of the royalties, versus if you go wide or non-exclusive, you get 25% of the royalties. So that's one choice, is to just go ACX exclusive. Another is to go wide from release. I do not know why I put that asterisk there. Maybe we'll find it later. That would be Findaway, is the company that most people know about, but there are others, including Authors Republic, and some very small ones. What I tend to recommend for most people is to start ACX exclusive and then go wide after the 90-day window that they insist that you stay in. The caveat is that you can only make this change one time. So what I generally suggest is have a look at your sales, and if they're still going strong, then wait, obviously, because you want to get that 40% royalty. But if not, then you might want to go wide. And one thing that a lot of people don't get is it is really different. There's a big difference between being wide versus exclusive in audio as being wide versus KU in ebooks. One difference, obviously, is that from what I just said, is you can go back and forth in KU. You cannot at ACX. But the bigger difference in terms of marketing is that in general, we understand that a KU audience is pretty much a KU audience. Those people, it's going to be a lot for them to step out of their KU world and actually pay more than their KU subscription for your book. Audible subscribers are in a different boat. And part of the reason is that an Audible subscription is pretty expensive, and they only get a handful or one audiobook per month. And I have in my intro to audiobook production, I have this really long thing on the history of Audible, which is the owner of ACX, if that's not clear. They are the Kleenex of what used to be called books on tape. And it's primarily because they did a lot of work to get there. Their first innovation was actually technology. They built the very first MP3 player, even before the iPod adopted that technology. But they also did a hell of a lot of marketing over the years. Every time there was any kind of competition from any other company, they just threw money at the situation. And when Amazon acquired them, they had more money to throw. However, they made what I consider to be a big mistake. In 2018, they created a subscription program that is more similar to KU than it is to a regular Audible subscription, in that they created this thing, was called something else, and then it was called Audible Escape. And the idea was that listeners could, for a certain amount per month, it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. And they really heavily encouraged, especially romance and other genre authors, to put their books in. And unfortunately, I think the big miscalculation was that Audible just really didn't understand how many books a listener can go through in a day, not just in a week or a month, but in a day. And Audible Escape almost trained them to listen to even more audiobooks. People started listening at work, while they were cleaning, while they were cooking, all the things that we all know they do now. And the problem is that the authors in Audible Escape were getting so little royalty because the pool wasn't quite big enough for the appetite, or the pie wasn't big enough for the appetite. And it was cannibalizing their regular Audible sales. So right around the same time, Audible canceled Audible Escape, and they replaced it with Audible Plus, which is really more of their product and fewer products from indie authors, especially. And around the same time, Audiblegate happened. And I'm not going to go into that, but it's essentially, we all learned how Audible had been returning audiobooks to consumers and sucking the money out of the author's account without making clear to us that was happening, because it wasn't reported. I think it was the end of Audible Escape and a blip in the system that revealed that this was happening to a bunch of authors. They started investigating, and it is still going on. They changed the rules a little bit, but they report when returns happen. But all of this created a situation where before it didn't really make sense for romance authors to go wide, because most of their audience, especially for indie authors, most of their audience was in Audible, and it was too much of a risk to leave that cozy place. But now that listeners can't get what they want with just 1 or 2 or 3 credits a month, they've started looking elsewhere, and they want their authors to be in the library, in Chirp, where they can get it on sale, in Kobo, in all these other places and they are looking for the deals. So that is why, to me, it makes sense now to think about going wide with your audiobooks. This is some more information. This was a recent survey that was done of, now this is not just romance listeners by any means. This is the only survey I could find where people were looking at where people were getting their audiobooks. But you can see that the library is very popular. iTunes is popular, Scribd is popular, Google Play, all these other places. So just a picture of what that world looks like. You're not letting me change. Okay, and this is another picture. This is right now all the channels that you can get to, all the distributors, retailers you can get to through Findaway. New is Spotify and Walmart and Radish, and there's even more down here. They're constantly adding other ones. All right, so the other big marketing decision that you have to make before you hire your narrator is who your narrator is going to be. In the before times, when ACX first started, when they were paying much higher royalties, when they were giving away download codes, that when you gave them to people, you actually got paid for those sales. There were a lot of romance narrators who were doing great. And there were also narrators who were coming in and seeing romance as a good way to get their start. And quite a few of them became romance narrator stars. And those people know their worth now. They are what the listeners call auto-buy narrators, that they will cross genres. They will go to new to them authors because they love their narration so much. Unfortunately, more and more, there's so much product that just paying the premium price for an auto-buy narrator is not going to guarantee you the flood of sales that it used to. There are so many boats in the ocean that the tide is rising. I'm mixing metaphors, but you cannot just rely on that. Also, again, they have learned their worth, and many of them, primarily the men, are raising their prices to be more than what, for just their unedited narration, to be more than what it generally costs to produce the entire book. To me, that's too big of a risk. The other issue with the auto-buy narrators is that their availability, it becomes very limited, and you have got to get them months and months and months in advance if you're lucky. The other big thing that I think people forget is casting. There's an art to casting in terms of matching the voice to the character. And you don't necessarily want a growly alpha male in your new adult book, or even in your light rom-com. So there's a certain amount of research and creativity that goes into narrator choice, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm happy to talk to you about that if that's something that people want to hear more about. I do have some workarounds. My main, the way I do casting and the way I recommend is to find people who are on the way up, people who have already recorded their 20 to 50 titles, so they're not trying themselves out and their equipment out on you, but the listeners are just starting to notice them. So that's a little tricky, and it requires some research and some allies, but it can be done. Okay, I don't know why I'm having this problem. Okay, so I am going to see if anybody has any questions at this point. Any questions, or are we good? Okay, all right, I'm going to keep sharing.
Karen, real quick, one thing that you had said that I didn't understand, you said something about you suggest, and I might have misheard this, I'm sorry, but
No
the
problem.
first 90 days, you do ACX for the first 90 days? I didn't understand that.
So it's a relatively newish rule. It happened since Audiblegate, but when you agree to be exclusive with ACX, their rule is that you must stay exclusive with ACX for 90 days, at least 90 days. And it's then you have to send them this special email, and this is on my website. You can just copy and paste and fill in your information. And you say, I now want to be released from my exclusivity. Sometimes they email you back and say, why do you want to leave? And I have to keep myself from being salty about telling them why I want to leave.
So the 7 years thing that's like the quote unquote rule, but really it's 90 days and then you can send a letter.
Oh, the 7 years has to do more with royalty share.
Okay.
If you do your book
If you do the
royalty
share.
share, you cannot leave ACX
Okay.
exclusivity until that's a great clarification.
Okay.
You must be pay for production.
Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you. That's where I got myself confused because I had
Yes.
the 7 year thing in my
Thank
head.
you for asking that. And yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm going to go back. Okay. So after you've hired your narrator, before they've begun to record, you want to get some other things under your belt. So you can, if a lot of people don't know, but you can request pre-order and release dates if you are exclusive with ACX. The release date, you have to jump through many hoops and it's a little bit complicated. So I have also a thing you can cut and paste and instructions on my website under author FAQs. It does require leaving a window of at least 2 weeks from when you upload to get the release date. In that, your upload has to go in, say, on December 1st, and your book release date cannot be set any earlier than December 15th. And you can set that date anytime, but if your audio is late, then you're screwed. So you want to make sure that you've got pretty solid delivery dates and then give yourself a little padding before you set that release date. Requesting a pre-order adds another 2 weeks. So that's something you got to decide whether that's important to you in terms of your marketing. The other thing you can do is discuss marketing with your narrator. So if you are royalty share, that is a situation where the narrator has a lot of motivation to help you market. And there's I have a long list of things you can do with your narrator if that's your situation. And again, that's on the big to-do list on my website. If you are pay per production, again, sometimes just the narrator's name is enough to get people to you. Sometimes, depending on where they are in their career, narrators will happily do things like do live readings on Discord or on Instagram Live, or go into groups and do live readings, Facebook groups, or send you things like blooper reels. This is an example of me having a hard time.
Where he shepherded her, shepherded her, shepherded her, shepherded her, shepherded her.
That goes on for a really long time. So you can get your narrators to record blooper reels like that. You Also, oh, but the thing you want to think about is that you've paid them for their recording services. They do not get any more money when the book sells. So they don't have a whole lot of motivation to help you to spend time marketing your book if they're not doing a royalty share. So don't be upset if they kind of blow you off. The best way to get their help is to make it as easy as possible. So you can say, I'm going to give you 5 copies you can give away to your fans. I will send you text you can post and graphics you can post on your social media whenever you get a chance. Just like you would with your ARC readers, or your street team, make it as easy as possible and don't expect that they'll do it. Now, if you have been clever and you found a narrator who is on the way up, they are going to be more motivated because they want to expand their clientele. So they want their voice and their face and their name in front of more listeners and more other authors. And they probably would like you to recommend them to other authors. So that's another plug for finding the on the way up narrators. Okay. Next thing you have to do is prepare the materials that are going to be recorded. This is a long list, and this is a really important list. And the first thing is a clean manuscript. You really don't want to hand over something that hasn't been proofread already, even if you're in a hurry, because getting things fixed is expensive if the problem was you. If the problem was the narrator's wrong record, then that's included in the price of production. But if you left out a chapter, if things like that happen, you're going to have to pay them all to go back in and fix it. Another thing you want to include is back matter. If you're working with a narrator, producer, or a production company, or doing it yourself, or in the first 2, they'll probably have a credits template. ACX has a credits template. It's very, very, very generic, but I recommend that you make suggestions for what you want to be in those credits. Do you want the series mentioned or not? Do you want the number the book is in the series mentioned or not? It depends on how you are marketing this. Do you really want to focus that it is part of a series, or is it really a standalone? The other main thing is to remember that, kind of like the movies, most of the audience leaves before the credits. I've toyed with the idea of putting a blooper at the end after the credits in my post to see if people will stay, but you can't expect that most people are going to leave. So I suggest creating a generic for a taste or a tease of another audiobook by you. Keep listening for another chapter. This gets inserted before the credits because you can't put anything after the credits, but also that's when people give up. Then you also can put in a chapter. If you do it very generic, then you can switch out what book next. Or you can have them do a specific one and a generic one. But this is something I think can really help you, hang on to those ears. You also want to, I suggest at the very end of the credits, just in case they listen, to just have one call to action that is easy to remember, because you got to remember they are listening. They might be in their car, they might be walking, they probably don't have a pen. So you want to have something like, actually, for me, for my newsletter sign up, it's followkarengray.com. And that takes them to a form. So think about something, and just one thing. Don't give them your Facebook and your Instagram and your newsletter and your website. Just give them one thing and make it something that's easy for them to find. The next thing is that, again, most narrators or production companies who are creating the book for you will just choose some 5-minute chunk. Unless you say, I want the retail sample that just under 5 minutes of narration that goes into the Audible, or the little sample underneath the cover of the book. you can choose a really juicy part of the text for them to include. Another thing that if you have more than one narrator, if you have a male and a female, not everyone does this, but it can be good to have a little chunk from the guy and a little chunk from the girl. So you can choose those things, so do it. The other thing I suggest is that asking, you can give them some other little bits of text that in the process, it's not a problem for the editor to pull out a little chunk here, a little chunk there, and just give it to you to be used later for your retailing, to create videos or to have alternate samples for your posts and your newsletter. But if you go back later, it's harder for them to dig that stuff up and cut it for you. Some other things you might want to think about having them record outside of the manuscript is the description of the book, the blurb, or if you like to give away bonus epilogues or deleted scenes, you could have them record 1 or 2 of those. Lastly, especially if you're getting to the end of a series, you want to think ahead about putting things into bundles and have some narrator at some point record all the possibilities for how you might want to bundle things. Maybe it's going to be like for me, it's the Boston Classic series part 1 and the Boston Classic series part 2. You also need to have all those narrators listed at the top of that intro and at the bottom with the correct copyright dates. So you want to come up with just a little collection of those and give that to one of your narrators to record, so you're set up when you're going to bundle, which we'll come to later. Okay, so this is another break. I am going to stop sharing and come back to you. Any questions at this point? Oh, okay. Oh, where did it go?
Thank you for doing this, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome. I've just lost. Oh, here you are. Oh, that was much easier. I'm going to keep doing that. Okay, so next stage is that little window, hopefully not too long, between when, oh, I'm sorry. So this is the section while they are narrating, but before they give you the finals. You can create graphics and videos that are clearly saying that it's an audiobook with the visuals and with the words. Again, don't only use that retail sample. The listener can go on Audible or on Kobo or Apple and listen to that sample. Use some other samples that you have created. You want to create some teaser clips, square and vertical, really short little videos with the narration and a little slideshow or a little video, things to do to share on social media. You can put them on Reels, on Stories, on TikTok, on YouTube. And then the other thing I suggest doing is taking sample chapters, 1, 2, or 3, depending on the length of your book. You can only do 10% of the total length when you're ACX exclusive, but also the union rules are around 10% as well. Put it on YouTube, embed that on your website with buy links, and then you can direct people there to listen to a whole chapter, hopefully get engaged, and then they'll click buy. So these are some examples. Here you can see we've got, it's the ebook cover, but she has put the earbuds. Here we've got the headphones and the phone with the audiobook cover. Currently listening is some good text, not currently reading, although I do call it ear reading. These are some examples of different little videos you can do.
All I had to do was touch her hand, and a bone-deep desire lit me up from the inside out. When the sides of her mouth lifted a fraction of an inch, I needed to feel that smile with my own.
So it's the guy doing the narrative, it's little scenes in a slideshow, and then the cover at the end. If you're doing TikTok, you might not want to do the cover. It changes constantly. Also, that text at the bottom would be a problem for TikTok. So you got to keep in mind where you're eventually going to put it. And this one is super short, but that is not necessarily a bad thing.
I want more of what we started. I want more of you. I want more with you.
So again, on TikTok, you're going to capture, it's only 7 seconds. You are more likely to have them continue listening. So these are just possibilities of things you can do with those.
All I had to do was touch her hand.
Okay. Here is an example of someone's, this is SM West's book, Griffin. This is what it looks like when the YouTube sample is embedded on her website. This is a screenshot. I don't have it, the actual thing here. So, but she's done a really good job. This is at the bottom of the book page. So up above this is all the stuff about her book in general. Then right below her ebook or general buy links, she's got information about the audiobook, all the different places you can buy it. This is when it's a ACX exclusive. You could add the other retailers if you go wide. And then this plays an entire chapter or a much longer chapter than what would normally be just a retail sample. This is Kate Nolan. She does a nice job too of highlighting her audiobooks on her website. This is the one option is to do the audiobook at the bottom or somewhere on each book page. What Kate does and what some authors also do is have an audiobook tab and an audiobook page. And you can include the audiobook on the book page and just direct them to this page and back and forth like that. But she's got the retail samples right here, easy to click on and listen to. Okay, sorry. This is another example. This is, so Cassie Alexander put up the entire prequel on, of this audiobook on, it's a short novella on YouTube, as well as sample chapters on YouTube. And then I had to copy that comment so much that, of course, that's what you want. I love the story so much that I bought the copy. So that's another place. If you've got a YouTube channel, this is just more stuff to put on there.
Dragons Don't Date. Prince of the Other Worlds story. Written by Cassie Lockhart.
So this is 44 minutes
Victoria
here.
May.
It's a, they can sit here and listen to 44 minutes of the book, again, get hooked, and then want to go and find it or go on to the next book and get that. Okay. This is something that most people don't know to do or think to do. I think because sometimes audiobook, the ACX world has been a kind of a Wild West for the past few years, especially during the pandemic when it was taking months for books to actually go live, that as soon as the book went live, people would just, as soon as they got the book, people would upload it and then just pray that it would go live at some point. But then you cannot plan your marketing push. So again, I really recommend setting a release date, if not a pre-order date, because that gives you the time to get advance listening copies to your team and have them review it. So when it goes live, you can instantly populate your Audible account with all those positive, hopefully, reviews. I do this and I recommend using BookFunnel. You can also, there are some other services. You can do it on SoundCloud, but because a lot of reviewers and everyday listeners are used to working with BookFunnel, and they can listen directly in that app, it's a really good option. Right now, it has been in beta for 2 years and been free. I've never had a problem with it. Their customer service is awesome. It also trains listeners to use the BookFunnel app so that when you begin selling direct to your listeners, they're already used to using that app, and it's less of a what's the word? A speed bump in that process. Right now, they're a little vague on when they're going to start charging and what they're going to start charging. So I pushed and I got this information. Right now, they just have that there's 3 plans, the 10 and the 25. And the next one is just, unless you were selling a bazillion books, you're not going to use it. It looks like the $10 per month plan is going to serve most authors until you get to the point where you're selling books on your website like gangbusters. The reason, again, I recommend doing this is that you can get these to people right when you get the book. They can be reviewing, so you can plan to have those reviews go up on release day. The reason I use BookFunnel and not Audible credits or Findaway credits is, again, remember when I talked about how Audible used to be extremely liberal with those credits, really generous, you would get paid for them. Now they have, at the most, you can get 100 download codes, and only 50 of them are in the US. So unless you have books that sell really well in the UK, those don't get used as much. And it's not a lot. And I don't want to, me personally, I don't like to waste those on people who may take it and never review, which is what happens when you give them away. So instead, I with Homecooked Books, I have a whole team of reviewers, but you can start to develop your own listening team. And as soon as they send you the review, you can decide who to give your very valuable, like gold Audible download codes to once the book goes live. Okay, when it goes live, want to make sure you have the buy links everywhere, and make sure if you use universal links, which of course I highly recommend, that all the audiobook links are in there too. Post about it everywhere. Again, ask your top ALC reviewers to repost using Audible download codes. And you want to start making your audio, even before this, a regular newsletter focus. Make sure people know your books are in audio. You can segment your newsletter into audiobook listeners, so you're just targeting them when the books go out. You can include links to snippets, embed that YouTube video in your newsletter. Okay, so again, I'm going to pause because now we're going to stop, and after this, we're going to talk about going wide. So any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I don't remember, like, it's been a while since I released an audiobook, but I thought that ACX had a policy that you're not allowed to share like more than just the sample portion. It might be when you're exclusive with ACX. I can't remember, but I remember there was some rule. Is it just one they don't enforce?
No, the rule you mean in terms of giving away books or in terms of posting?
No, in terms of posting and like having a sample on your website or something.
The rule is 10% of the finished book.
Oh, okay.
So like I said, usually that's about a chapter, but it could be more depending on, obviously.
I don't know why I thought it was the other thing. Oh.
Well, yeah, that's what I found. Now, I will say that what's a little hard to discern, and I'm kind of afraid to ask this question, is what they mean by distribution. Like, if you'll notice, I'm going to take this out of my presentation. The word distribute. It's like how Amazon doesn't like you to say, I got this I got this book free in exchange for a review. I think there are some words that are triggering to them, even though we might mean one thing and they might mean another. If you're ACX exclusive, you cannot willy-nilly make your audiobook on BookFunnel available to the entire world. I don't think that is wise, because that would be considered, to me anyway, I'm not a lawyer and I can't give this legal advice on this, but from my point of view, that seems like distributing. However, giving copies to a group of reviewers, to me, is not distributing. That is giving out copies in exchange for review. You're giving out copies to people who can choose to review if they like. I think it would also be wise, if you're exclusive, to then stop doing that once the book goes live. So to me, that is the safe way to go. Some people disagree. To me, it's worth getting those advanced reviews in order to, or having those reviews ready when the book goes live.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So now the rest of this is going to be, I'm not trying to convince you to go wide, but once you go wide, you have a lot more leeway in things that you can do with your books and a larger audience. So again, I think of this as the long tail, but you are definitely going to make the most money right after release and while you're on ACX, just because they are the Kleenex. That's where the majority of listeners are. However, those listeners are also looking for bargains elsewhere. So, and ACX, Audible, does not allow you to put a book on sale. So the only way you can do that is to be wide. And that's what a lot of the wide strategy is all about. So one of the first things you want to do, well, first of all, when you go wide, my recommendation is do not leave ACX and then put your book up on Audible through Findaway. You definitely don't want to do that, because then you're adding a middleman that you don't want in there. So just leave it there at ACX. Don't change that. You also want to upload to Kobo Direct, because that's the only way that you can participate in their promotions. They are actively growing their audiobook market. Kobo, I don't know if you know, but they are a company that is working really hard to engage readers all around the world. And they are really big in markets that in the ebook realm that Amazon is not. And they are working to make that the case in audiobooks. So sign up direct with Kobo and then immediately ask to be on their list for audiobook promotions and Overdrive promotions. This is different than getting that promotions tab on your dashboard. That promotions tab, at least for now, is still only for ebooks. So you're basically on an email list for promotions. And so do that. And then everything else you want to put up through Findaway or somewhere else if Findaway doesn't work for you. I think Findaway is doing a really good job of acquiring new retailers. And they're also just really easy to work with. Another thing you can do, a lot of people, we started going back to signings this year, and you can sell audiobooks and promote audiobooks in person, even though they are digital. I forgot to get my visual aids, but you can, I'll bring them up at the end if we have time. You can make Serena Bowen, I stole this idea from her. You can see some on her website. She has audio cards. They are the size and shape of an old CD case. They have the audiobook cover on it, and you can sign that and sell them a digital audiobook at the same time using a QR code. You can also give away books by putting a QR code for a free download of say a novella or a first book in series on a bookmark or on a little business card that you give away with a purchase of something else. Ways to make sure people know that your books are on audio when you're in person. Your biggest tool, obviously, is running promotional sales. Applying for chirps, as valuable in the audiobook world as applying for the BookBub featured deal. If you don't know, Chirp is actually owned by BookBub, but the difference is that Chirp is actually a retailer as well as a company that runs these discount emails. You can, whenever you run a, so if you get a Chirp, there's a whole list of things you can do to support that, including doing BookBub ads. I recommend also discounting on the other retailers that allow you to at the same time, so that you can promote all your books that are on sale and try to raise your visibility on all those other retailers. It's Chirp, Kobo, Apple, Nook Audio, and Spotify, supposedly, though I think they're still working the bugs out on that, because when I tried to set a sale on Spotify, they reduced it, but not as much as I asked for. And then there are companies coming online that do your newsletter promotions. So like Free Booksy, etc. Audio Thicket is one that I have not done yet, but people are saying good things about it. Their newsletter is only for audiobook subscribers, so you're not getting lumped in amongst ebooks. So that's another way you can try to promote a sale. Another thing you can do is again, do the things that you would do with your ebooks, but with your audiobooks. Do newsletter swaps with other authors for, again, a free short book or a free first in series, or even a free bonus scene or a deleted scene. And you can either do other promotions with other authors, just like you would with your ebooks. Another thing you want to do is make sure, besides when you're letting your subscribers know that they can get your book in audio, you can also let them know that they can get your book in libraries. Like getting ebooks in libraries, it's a little tricky because every library does it slightly differently, but you can let them know that they can request it. And hopefully that will get you some of those library sales. Then another thing you can do is, once you've got, say, a whole series out or half of a series, is create audio bundles. But ACX does have some pretty strict rules around audio bundles, so you want to be kind of thoughtful about how you create them. The big rule is that you cannot bundle a book that's in audio you cannot put it in more than one box set or bundle. So say you have a novella and you wanted to put it in the first half of your series, but also in your second half of your series, you can't do that. The other tricky thing that makes it a little difficult is that every book that you're going to load up to ACX has to exist on Amazon. So say you wanted to, again, put an extra novella in, you've got to have that novella on Amazon before you can put it up on ACX. That's got to be live, and then you can put it in the bundle. So you have to do a little more planning. The other thing is what I mentioned earlier is they have a pretty strict minimum of things that have to be included in the credits. You can use the credits for each individual book that you already have, but you do have to have an introduction and an closing credits for the book, for the bundle as a whole. Finally, you want to think about what you're bundling on Amazon and what you want to be bundling on Audible because those have to match up. So if you don't want to put, say, 4 books in a box set because you can only charge $9.99 for it and still get the higher royalties, then you want to do the same on Audible. So again, so that this book exists on Amazon, then it can exist on Audible. However, this may not be as big of a problem, but when at RAM, the woman who was there from Kobo said that they do have limits on how big an audiobook can be. So if you get, say you wanted to do a really big box set outside of Amazon in order to get those people who are willing to pay higher prices on Kobo or Nook, you can't put like 8 audiobooks in one on Kobo. It's a memory limit, so that's a little tricky. You have to go through and like add up the memory that each chapter uses, which to me is a lot. So I think you want to just keep that in mind. Don't try to make too big of a bundle when you're uploading elsewhere. And there was one more thing I was going to say about that. It'll come back to me. Okay. Oh, and then finally buying direct. One way, the easier way, with a little bit more cost up front to sell direct is through Findaway has Authors Direct. That again, it's easy to set up. It's like $100 to do initially, but it's on their website. So the other way to do it is to use something like PayHip or Shopify, interacting with BookFunnel to deliver directly from your own shop front. This gives you a lot of control. Some people are experimenting, especially if they're releasing wide, with releasing on their own shop fronts first. So there's a kind of a big learning curve. Things are getting easier and easier as these different companies figure out how to automate delivery. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. As you go forward, it may be worth waiting until you have a larger library in order to put that all in. But I put Erin's up here. Both she has a really good shop on PayHip, I think, but it is, the title of it is ErinNicholasShop.com. And you can get all of her ebooks and audiobooks there. Okay, so that was an hour. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, Dylan, I'm sorry you're late. I am recording this, so I will put that in the Facebook group when it's done.
I have a question.
Yep.
The you talked about like the sales that you can do on Chirp and different things, but I don't know if I've just missed this. But when you do that, isn't it, since I have it on Findaway, and then but I don't have ACX listed, I do that direct. How do can you price match, or is it only going to be on sale on those certain vendors?
It's only on sale on
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure I was not missing something. Okay,
they won't. I mean, you know, Audible runs sales, but they never tell you if your book is in it or not, and so you can't promote it. You don't even know what's happening. You just get less money.
It's so crazy how they run that compared to, you know, the regulars. Like, there's no way to advertise just for the, you know, you do for ebooks on like the Amazon ads. There's no way to do it for, you can do ebooks and you can do paperback, but you can't do audio. It's just weird.
Well, I think that's because Audible is still its own company.
But I mean, you can't even do it on there.
Yeah.
If you go to acx.com, like there's no way. I'm like, I will give you money to show my book.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome. So again, the long to-do list is on my website, but you have to kind of copy and paste it to get it. There's other, so it's all in that FAQs tab. I also put up, I made this weekend a video of how to take a chapter and cut it down to a 7-second or a 30-second clip that then you can use to make little videos. I don't know. I mean, it's tough figuring out things like TikTok and audiobooks. Obviously, you know, a lot of what's making things go viral is the sound. To me, the dream is that the sound from my audiobook goes viral. You know, and there are, you know, if you clip some of these really sexy moments with a sexy guy's voice, that is more likely to happen than not. But I think it's worth it to put your book out there, to make it clear that it's in audio, and to give people a different experience of hearing the voice and hearing and seeing images.
Hey, Karen.
Yeah.
When you are when you're finding a narrator, and I have so many questions because I'm doing this right now, and I'm frozen in fear and not moving forward because I don't have confidence in what I'm doing. But so one, you talked about like trying to find that up and comer guy or narrators. And you said something about 50 titles. Is that considered an up and coming still at that point? 50 titles? Like, what would be the range for that you would feel comfortable?
To me, if they don't have 20 titles, I'm not even gonna look at them. But
okay.
Sometimes they might have more than one a narrator pseudonym. So you can ask.
Okay.
The thing, it's not necessarily that they need to have 50 titles as that person, and that's going to sell your book. It's more that I did this for 20 years. And when I started as a narrator, we were all getting directed by people in a studio. Now people are taking classes and then just going for it. So it's a skill. It's a craft. It's an art. And you really, really don't want people figuring out how to do this on your book, because those reviews will be there for a really long time, and you've paid a lot, even if it's someone who's new and cheap. And they might sound great in 5 minutes or even 15 minutes, but are they able to keep things consistent across many, many chapters? Are they able to, tell the story with an emotional arc that is believable and that really, keeps the listeners engaged? These are things that you can, unfortunately, it's really one of those things where you can only learn by doing it. So they have to learn on somebody's books, unless they're disciplined enough to, do it for free, or just to sit there and work with a coach. That's why even so many people are now starting with coaches, that I think that's why the 20 is okay. But 20 to 50, yeah, to me, that is somebody still figuring it out.
Okay. And I think I found the person, and they actually have a lot of titles, so that's good. So the next question I have for you is, when it comes to, and maybe one of the links I'm looking at on your website right now has this, so I'm sorry if I'm asking a question that you already have the answer to below. But so when you're starting to negotiate with that person, you're like, okay, like I have a series of books, right? So that's another reason why I'm frozen in fear, because I'm like, once I start, I want to have the same narrator through the series, right? So I know that I'm entering a long-term situation with them. How do you schedule out the all of the extras, right? Like, I'm gonna need a 2-minute like audio sample for, the what is it called, the sample or whatever, like on Find a Way or whatever. I would like to have a 30-second, could you read this little snippet for 30 seconds? Like, how do you just like give them a laundry list and then ask them to price all of it with their PFHs, or?
So it kind of depends on how you're working with them and if they're their own editor. But usually what I do is I give them the manuscript, and then I give them a PDF that has my all the credits that I want them to read and any other little extra things that I want them to read, like these teaser things. Let's keep listening for a sample of another Sylvie Stewart audiobook. Those are all there. Now, if you're going to want to have things edited out that are part of the text already being recorded, that's a list you're going to give them too, but this is not something they're recording extra. It's something that's being extracted by the editor once the whole thing is done.
Is that easier than having them just re-record a little snippet?
Yeah, because you really want it to be, you know,
final
in the moment, and definitely you want it to be the final copy. I mean, the final high level, high quality MP3. However, I think, you know, what I said, and things like bonus epilogues or deleted scenes, those you definitely want to give to them ahead of time. And then that will all be included in the per finished hour rate. So things that they have to record separately will all be included in the per finished hour rate. Things that you're going to pull out, as long as you don't ask for too many of them besides the retail sample, the engineer will probably just do that for you as part of the whole deal.
And they're used to having that request for the sample.
The 5-minute retail sample is always included.
Okay.
Because you have to have that. Other things you have to ask for. And they might charge you a little bit more for it, but usually if it's just included in the per finished hour, like the credits are included in the per finished hour total.
Okay, thank you.
But the point is to think, don't just add in all this stuff if you're not going to use it, because a bonus scene, depending on how long it is, that could be another several $100. So you do want to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
Karen,
Yeah.
do you have any advice on pushing your backlist, like ones that have been out for, several years?
You mean the audiobooks, not making audiobooks.
Yes. The audiobooks, yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. I would do all the things that were in the backlist section. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything you can do besides create bundles when you're exclusive to ACX. Again, like Sarah was saying, you can't advertise and change the algorithm. You're really at their mercy in terms of making anything happen other than talking about it in your newsletter. But to me, that's the reason to go wide, because that's a whole potential new audience, especially internationally.
Yeah, wide is on my to-do list.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit, and I find that they're starting to sort of drag their feet on letting you out, even though they're supposed to, and even though they start. Oh, and one tip is, don't ask to be released. And I so stupidly just did this at the end of a month, because they will sneakily try to lower your royalty for the full month. So do it in the middle of the month.
That's crazy.
I know. They're kind of an evil company. Don't say it. I said that. Well, I just said it, and it's going to be recorded, but whatever. We're at their mercy. They are the Kleenex. So, but I think that's why, the other companies are working so hard to give us other options. And Kobo and Chirp are the ones where you're probably going to move the most books, besides Scribd and I don't know what it is, biblioteca, but I just get a bunch of books sold there. I think it's like a library somewhere in the world. Oh, and the other thing, this is on the long list, but make sure to, when you're doing your Facebook ads, I don't know if you, when Serena was talking about selling internationally, in my mind, that's what I do in terms of audiobooks, and that I make sure that you include all your audiobook links in your Facebook advertising, so that people, that's maybe not going to be your first link unless you're advertising a new book, but I would say that to make sure it's up in the top if you've got a list of links, and again, making sure that they're in your universal links so that people can find them that way. I am really, I've done one, and I'm going to try to do more this spring, but I'd like to start doing some group promotions, organizing some group promotions where we can do like free parts of books or short books, or just do sales. We have a lot more freedom when books are wide, again, in terms of putting things on sale. But I think that's something that we're not really taking advantage of as authors, is using each other's newsletters, like doing newsletter swaps. And it doesn't have to be a sale. It can be new releases. So again, it's just keep making your audience bigger.
Do you feel that the ebooks have to be in the same retailers as the audiobook? So like if you were in Kindle Unlimited for an ebook, but wide for the audiobook?
No, because only Audible has that whisper sync feature, where the ebook and the audiobook are actually connected. There, if you look, for instance, on Kobo's, like if you look and search for a book on Kobo, a lot of times only the audiobook is there, not the ebook. I think most places they're very distinct, like, and Chirp only sells audiobooks. Many of these distributors only sell audiobooks. So I don't think it's necessary. And that's the other thing, the difference between KU and Audible exclusive is that when you leave KU, you get sucked out of that world where all those people are used to you being. When you leave Audible, when you leave ACX exclusivity, the consumer has no idea. It looks exactly the same to them. The experience is exactly the same to them. They spend their credit and they get your book or a book. That's the biggest reason why I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so feel free to reach out if you have specific questions. If you want to talk about doing a tour with us, but don't feel obligated. And if you have feedback, like I said at the beginning, I really appreciate hearing, things that maybe I glossed over too quickly, or things that didn't make sense, or things that seemed unnecessary. I am definitely interested in hearing those things. And good luck.
Thank you so much.
Good luck with your journey. Bye.
Thanks so much,
Thank you so
Karen.
much, Karen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.